Now, next month, the student accused of going on a killing spree inside of Oxford High School in 2021 will be sentenced.
But his parents' case is still ongoing through the court system, and now the mother of the shooter has placed the blame on her husband for the shooting. She says the dad of the shooter helped the son by buying the gun days before the shooting. We kind of want to make sense of what the court case will be like and what these statements really mean to the overall strategy. We want to bring in legal expert Jamie White. Jamie, thank you so much for being with us on Good Day.
Yeah, it's great to see you guys.
Yeah, you as well. So kind of give us the rundown. I think this kind of came out last week, but I don't know if bombshell is the right word, but just some in jail statements that were made that could really impact how the trial shakes out for both of Ethan Crumbley's parents.
Yeah, it's really significant and really not surprising. There does seem to be a different level of culpability as it pertains to the individual parents. The decision as to whether or not to try someone is based on a really old, really since the days of our country's founding, and that is you have the right to face your accuser. And so if one parent is going to point the finger at the other, they arguably have the right to cross-examine them and put them in that position. And that makes trying people together really untenable. There's some work to do here. The lawyers have been working through the Court of Appeals on multiple issues. And, this issue may be one that we see go through the higher courts as well.
So this case is getting separated now. Just reiterate that for us or explain that, because they were being tried together, but now with these new allegations from the wife towards the husband, they're going to have to separate them.
Correct, because you can't, at the end of the day, the wife or the husband, if they have antagonistic positions, then they're unable to sit in the same courtroom. It's found legally inappropriate. So they will have separate trials as we sit here today. I don't know that the people will appeal that position, but as we sit here today, the tables have turned. And again, not surprising. There's a lot to lose here on the part of both parties. They've been separated for, I believe, 2 years now. So the fact that there's been some decisions to be antagonistic to each other is not shocking. We see it all the time in husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, friend cases.
Now, that I guess just made a little light bulb click in my head. Now, is this a tactic in a way? Because, as you said, there is a lot at stake for both the parents right now. So was this likely a tactic by the mother's attorneys to separate it to give her a better chance in the court case?
No question. And I wouldn't be surprised if the husband was on board with the decision. I know that I know these attorneys, and I know that it would not surprise me if there was some collaboration that this is what we're going to do. Even though that may not be said on the record, it's sort of, the classic case of like, I don't want my wife to go down for it. Right.
Yeah.
So it certainly is a legal tactic. It's one that's taken them some time to come to, obviously, but it's not surprising. There's no need for both of them to take full responsibility. In fact, the purchase of the weapon is really one of the key aggravating factors that I think separates the two defendants, the two parent defendants. They certainly, a lot of their behaviors led them to be charged. The consciousness of guilt, fleeing the scene, being found, of all the documents they could have escaped with, they took the receipt for the weapon. But in my opinion, the ultimate purchase of the weapon is really the aggravating factor that takes us from parents who maybe were neglectful and certainly are responsible to criminal behavior.
Jamie, I'm curious, I don't know, maybe we're getting into the minutia of it a little bit, but is there any discussion, strategy, negotiations in terms of which of those parents goes first in a trial? Because if you can't, same prosecution, you're not doing them at the same time, right?
That's correct. And it's not the choice of the defendants, but if you do have a preference, you certainly want the more serious offense to go forward first, or at least the person who has the most exposure from an evidentiary point of view. Because if they're convicted, then you see the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. And you may be more inclined to enter into a plea deal after seeing a conviction of the other defendant.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Now, Jamie, you mentioned one of the big catalysts here is the purchasing of the firearm used. Are there other elements that are bringing the parents into the courtroom?
So, this is a fascinating case, and regardless of the outcome, this case is going to be studied in law schools, and there's going to be journals written about it in the legal community, because as a general proposition, we're not responsible for the behavior of third parties. It's called duty. And then there's the issue of causation. Did you actually cause the crime? That's an easier one to get to. But the issue of duty is a fascinating question that has been explored more and more throughout the country as it pertains to parents and their children. So what's really interesting is, even though he's been tried as an adult, as a general matter, a juvenile, if they're to go out joyriding, they run through your fence, the young man or young woman gets in trouble, the parents get the bill and they're responsible for it. So the court has already made decisions to some extent in Michigan that parents are responsible for the behavior of their children, whether or not you sanctioned it or not. Now, this is an adult case, arguably, so the rules are a little different. But the idea becomes, are we going to hold third parties responsible for the intentional acts of their children? And I have to tell you, I think the court has gotten this one right so far. I personally, from a legal point of view and a personal point of view, have always held the position that, for example, if a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old misses half a year of school, in my mind, that's a criminal act. You're setting that young person up for failure. A little different with teenagers, but for young people, I think there's been some precedent already set that we're responsible for our children. So you have a young mentally ill person who the school notified you that there was some disturbing behavior. You've previously purchased him a gun. That act in of itself was illegal, right? I mean, You're supposed to be a certain age to purchase a gun, so that we have a straw purchase that happened. But even after the fact that you find out that he's having problems at school, you don't disclose the fact there's a weapon. You don't make any attempt to remove the weapon from his possession. I think the court's got this one right as far as whether or not the parents should be on trial. It will be up to a jury to decide whether or not they're guilty, but this question will be addressed throughout the legal community going forward.
Jamie, just a few seconds left here, 30 seconds or less, but we know also that the parents were not allowed to attend or won't be allowed to attend their son's sentencing. What do you make of that? That kind of struck me because they haven't been convicted of anything yet. I mean, innocent until proven guilty. So what are your thoughts on them, not being able to be there for that?
I understand why they made that request, but I think that the prosecutor made the appropriate request for that not to happen, and the judge followed through appropriately. They still will be able to see their son on a live stream. In the event they were in the courtroom, they would not be able to interact with him. They'd not be able to hug him. They'd not be able to talk to him. They themselves would remain in shackles, which I think would create a huge distraction for the court. And most importantly, it's important to remember there's 4 dead children and their parents and their family and their friends, and to take the spotlight off of them being allowed to have some accountability, allowing them to be heard.
Sure.
That would be really unfortunate. So I think it was the right decision.
Well, thank you so much, Jamie White, for your insight into this very complicated case. We're going to make sure more information and links to connect with Jamie all are going to be available on 9and10news.com after the show today.